Is Charles Martin being underestimated by the majority of boxing fans? Because as soon as this Joshua fight was made, most people came straight out and said, this is easy pickings for Anthony Joshua. And that obviously was off the back of Charles Martin fighting Tsar Glaskov. And although the Glaskov fight ended on a technicality because Glaskov was injured, leading up to that injury and the end of the fight, personally, I felt that Martin didn't look that great. And I've seen a number of Charles Martin's fights, and he's an underwhelming kind of fighter to watch. Never tends to blow you away with anything that he does, but at the same time, he don't have glaring vulnerabilities to me either. He's not a guy that has shown a weakness in terms of punch resistance from any of the fights I've seen. He hasn't shown issues of stamina. He hasn't shown a particularly bad defense. I mean, he's certainly no Pernell Whitaker, but he hasn't shown particular defensive vulnerabilities. But it has to be said, he's been fighting a fairly low quality of opponent up until he fought Glaskov, who's not particularly great himself. But if you do go through Charles Martin's record, he has fought people like Joey Dwayko, who, again, not an amazing fighter, but a tough guy and who's technically good. And he was able to stop Joey Dwayko in that fight in 4 rounds. Dwayko, just to give you a comparison, Dwayko took Amir Mansour the distance, and he never came close to being stopped by Amir Mansour in that fight. Whereas Charles Martin managed to stop the same opponent, Dwayko, in 4 rounds and dropped him. So, yeah, he seems competent technically, Charles Martin, and he's a southpaw, and he tends to pick his spots and wait for his opportunities. He's never really in a rush. And when you have a guy like Anthony Joshua, who tends to be in a rush to try and take you out, there is the possibility there of, and he's a southpaw as well, Charles Martin, a big, tall, 6'5" southpaw who's relaxed, takes his time, waits to pick his spots and catch you with counters. With a guy like that, there is the possibility that if Joshua comes in overzealous, looking to impress in his first world title fight when he's so inexperienced, there is a possibility that he could run on to a big left hand from Charles Martin and maybe get hurt. I do think, I feel that Charles Martin is going to be more difficult to get to for Anthony Joshua than Dillian Whyte was. He might not be as tough as Dillian Whyte. I don't know. I have to see him take the kind of shots that Dillian Whyte was taking, and I have to see him under that type of pressure. But just defensively, I feel, and because of the height of Martin and the fact he's a southpaw, I think Joshua will find it more difficult to get to him. And along with that, he's going to find, I think, Charles Martin's counters could be a lot more dangerous or a lot more frequent than Dillian Whyte's counters were. Now, Dillian Whyte landed a very nice counter left hook off the ropes, which seriously hurt Anthony Joshua. But with that counter left hook aside, his counter punching, it was okay. Dillian Whyte's counter punching against Joshua, but it wasn't that effective. I have the feeling that with Martin's southpaw style, height and size, and his whole approach to the game of being more of a counter puncher, I feel that his counters might be more of a threat to Joshua than Dillian Whyte's were. And as I say, from a stylistic point of view, he might be more difficult to get to, maybe a bit better defensively than Dillian Whyte. So, yeah, that's the question I'm going to put to you guys. Is Charles Martin being underestimated here? Most of us, including me, have been acting as though this is a foregone conclusion, that we can start planning Joshua's career after he beats Charles Martin. But what if he don't beat Charles Martin? Tyson Fury has come out and said that he thinks Charles Martin's going to beat Anthony Joshua. I'm not sure, but I believe it might have been Peter Fury also said the same thing. And there have been a number of other figures, public figures in the world of boxing who have said, you know what? We've been hearing rumors and stories that Charles Martin's actually a pretty good fighter. You know, behind the scenes in sparring, he's been giving a lot of guys problems and what have you. So what do you think, people? Are we jumping the gun here, acting as though this is a surefire thing that Joshua's going to beat Martin? Or is this a much more difficult fight than most people are anticipating? Drop me your comments in the comment section below. Let me know how you feel. It's your boy Hatman. I'm out.